Dearest listeners, there are lies we tell to wound, lies we tell to protect, and then there are lies we tell to survive. Today, this author brings you the most thrilling tale of a deception born of desperation that blossomed into the most unexpected truth: love. But let us not rush, for the best scandals, like the most intricate of mysteries, must be unraveled thread by careful thread. One must begin this tale not in a London ballroom, gentle listeners, but on a storm-lashed road in Yorkshire, where fate dealt its cruelest hand on a night this past February. Miss Diana Pemberley, 26, had served as companion to the elderly Mrs. Arabella Fairfax for 3 unremarkable years. Unremarkable, that is, if one did not count Diana's quick wit, her unusual education, courtesy of a father who had been a scholar before drink claimed him, and her unfortunate position as one of society's invisible women. You know the sort, dearest listeners. Too well-born for service, too poor for society, existing in that peculiar purgatory reserved for impoverished gentlewomen. Mrs. Fairfax, widow of a wealthy merchant and distant cousin to the Earl of Carlisle, had no children and few friends. She was, to put it delicately, of a difficult temperament that had driven away no fewer than 7 companions before Diana arrived. But our Diana possessed that rarest of qualities: genuine kindness coupled with an iron spine. She alone could weather Mrs. Fairfax's storms and find the frightened, lonely woman beneath. This author has it on excellent authority from the Fairfax coachman, who survived that terrible night, that the journey to London was Mrs. Fairfax's own idea. She had received word that her cousin, the old Earl of Carlisle, had died, and she was named in the will. At 73, traveling in February was madness, but Mrs. Fairfax insisted, declaring she would not let those vultures in the Carlisle family pick over her inheritance. The morning of their departure brought an odd occurrence that would prove fateful. Mrs. Fairfax, in one of her peculiar moods, had spilled tea upon her traveling dress. She insisted on exchanging garments with Diana, declaring that she would not arrive in London looking like a ragamuffin, and Diana's simpler dress would suffice for the journey's first day. Diana, accustomed to such whims, complied. Mrs. Fairfax also thrust her document case into Diana's hands, insisting her companion guard it with her life, as it contained all papers relating to the Carlisle inheritance. The carriage accident occurred just past midnight, on a curve overlooking the river wharf. The coachman was thrown clear, knocked insensible. When he awoke hours later, confused and concussed, he found a scene that would haunt him forever. Mrs. Fairfax, dead from the impact, wearing Diana's simple dress, and Miss Pemberley, barely conscious, blood streaming from a head wound, clutching the leather document case marked with Mrs. Fairfax's initials, wrapped in the lady's expensive traveling cloak. When the villagers arrived with lanterns and concern, they asked the coachman to identify the victims. Still confused, seeing only through blurred vision, he pointed to the body in the simple dress and mumbled that the companion had died. The well-dressed lady with the monogrammed case must surely be Mrs. Fairfax. Diana, delirious with pain and shock, was taken to the nearest inn. The innkeeper's wife, Mrs. Thorne, a good woman but nearly blind without her spectacles, which she had mislaid, tended to the injured lady. In her delirium, when asked her name, Diana mumbled incoherently. Mrs. Thorne, seeing the initials on the document case and the quality of the cloak, naturally assumed this was Mrs. Fairfax. When Diana awoke 3 days later, her memory clouded and fragmentary, she found herself in a private room, being addressed as Mrs. Fairfax. The true Mrs. Fairfax, she learned with growing horror, had already been buried in the local churchyard under Diana's name, identified by the coachman whose vision and memory had both been compromised by his injuries. Diana tried to correct the mistake, but Mrs. Thorne, bustling about, merely patted her hand and said the tragedy had clearly addled her wits, poor dear. The more Diana protested, the more concerned Mrs. Thorne became about her mental state, finally summoning the local physician who prescribed laudanum for her hysteria and delusions brought on by trauma. Then came the letter that changed everything. A solicitor from London, informing Mrs. Fairfax that she had inherited a comfortable independence from the late Earl of Carlisle, £20,000 and a charming house in Bath. The letter expressed urgency as the estate needed to be settled and requested her presence in London as soon as she was well enough to travel. Diana held that letter with trembling hands, her mind racing. She had exactly 3 shillings to her name. No family, her father dead, her mother long deceased. No prospects, no references, as Mrs. Fairfax was her only employer in recent years. If she revealed the truth now, she would be not only destitute, but suspected of somehow causing Mrs. Fairfax's death. Who would believe the truth was mere accident and confusion? What would you have done, gentle listeners? This author confesses she might have been tempted by far less. By the time Diana arrived in London in early March, she had almost convinced herself the deception was temporary. She would claim the inheritance, settle somewhere far from society, and live quietly. Who would it harm? Mrs. Fairfax had no family who cared for her, no friends who would mourn her. The money would otherwise go to distant Carlisle relatives who had never bothered to acknowledge her existence. Diana had spent the journey studying Mrs. Fairfax's papers obsessively, memorizing every detail of her life. The document case contained correspondence, legal papers, even a small diary with observations about various family members. It was an education in becoming someone else. This author observed Diana's first appearance at the solicitor's office in Lincoln's Inn. She wore Mrs. Fairfax's clothes, altered to fit her younger, slimmer frame, and had adopted the older woman's slight stoop and hesitant manner of speech. The performance was remarkable, though of course, at the time, this author had no notion she was witnessing a performance at all. The solicitor, Mr. Grimsby, a man whose dedication to paperwork exceeded his interest in people, barely looked up from his documents. He had never met Mrs. Fairfax, knowing her only through correspondence. Diana signed the papers with a trembling hand, having practiced Mrs. Fairfax's signature for days, until it was perfect. She took lodgings in a respectable but unremarkable hotel in Bloomsbury, planning to conclude the business quickly and disappear to Bath. But fate, dearest listeners, had other plans. Fate in the form of Lord Thomas Carlisle, newly returned from India and the last person Diana expected or wanted to meet. Lord Thomas was the late Earl's nephew, 32, with the kind of sharp, penetrating gaze that came from 5 years investigating financial crimes for the East India Company. He was tall, lean, with sun-weathered features that made him look older than his years and eyes the color of winter seas, gray, cold, and seemingly able to see through any deception. This author had encountered Lord Thomas at several social events before his departure for India. He was known for 3 things: his brilliant mind, his complete disinterest in society marriages, and his uncanny ability to detect when someone was lying. It was said he could spot a forged document at 20 paces and a false identity at 10. One can only imagine Diana's horror when he appeared at her hotel the very next morning. He introduced himself as her late cousin's nephew, expressing condolences and a desire to ensure she was comfortable with the inheritance arrangements. His manner was perfectly polite, but those gray eyes never left her face, studying her with an intensity that made Diana's skin prickle with anxiety. She managed the interview tolerably well, keeping her answers vague, claiming the accident had affected her memory. But when he mentioned specific family details, asking after her late husband's business partners, referencing correspondence she had supposedly sent years ago, she could only plead continued confusion from her injuries. Lord Thomas left after an hour, but not before making an observation that chilled Diana to her core. He mentioned how remarkable it was that grief and trauma had quite transformed her appearance, making her seem decades younger than her years. The way he said it, with just the slightest emphasis on the word transformed, made it clear he suspected something. That night, Diana found a note slipped under her door, unsigned but in a masculine hand. The truth has a way of revealing itself. Sometimes, confession is safer than discovery. She burned it immediately, her hands shaking. Act the 3rd, the dance of suspicion and attraction. What followed, gentle listeners, was the most exquisite dance of hunter and prey, though it became increasingly unclear who was which. Lord Thomas began appearing everywhere Diana went. When she visited the bank, he was there on business. When she took tea at Gunter's, hoping to calm her nerves with their famous ices, he materialized at the next table. When she attended St. George's to maintain the fiction of Mrs. Fairfax's religious devotion, he was already seated in the Carlisle family pew, hymnal in hand. But here is where our tale takes its delicious turn. Lord Thomas had indeed begun his own investigation the day after meeting Diana. He had written to Yorkshire, requesting information about the accident and descriptions of both women involved. The response he received was damning. The magistrate's letter clearly described Mrs. Fairfax as a stout woman of advanced years with graying hair and a prominent birthmark on her left cheek. That evening, this author later learned, Lord Thomas sat in his study, staring at the letter that should have ended Diana's charade immediately. It was his duty to expose her, to protect his family's interests, to uphold the law he had spent 5 years enforcing in India. Instead, he found himself thinking of the young woman who had tried so hard to be invisible at their meeting, yet whose intelligence had flashed through like lightning in her responses. He thought of the fear in her eyes, the desperation she tried to hide, the way her hands had trembled as she signed the papers. He burned the magistrate's letter. From that moment forward, Lord Thomas's pursuit of Diana took on a different character entirely. Yes, he was investigating her, but he was also protecting her. When a distant Carlisle relative began asking questions about Mrs. Fairfax's miraculous transformation, Lord Thomas quietly discouraged further inquiry. When the family solicitor expressed doubts, Lord Thomas assured him all was well. Meanwhile, he began what can only be described as a courtship disguised as surveillance. This author witnessed one particularly telling encounter at Hatchard's bookshop. Diana, forgetting herself, had become absorbed in a volume of Latin poetry, Ovid's Metamorphoses, rather appropriate given the circumstances. She was translating aloud under her breath, a habit from her youth, when Lord Thomas approached. Instead of maintaining Mrs. Fairfax's character, who had no classical education, Diana engaged him in a spirited debate about the nature of transformation in Ovid's work. For 10 glorious minutes, she forgot to stoop, forgot to hesitate, forgot to be anyone but herself. The look on Lord Thomas's face was extraordinary, not surprise or suspicion, but pure delight. When Diana suddenly remembered herself and reverted to character, claiming she must have recalled lessons from her dear departed husband, Lord Thomas simply smiled and suggested they continue their discussion over tea. That afternoon at Gunter's, witnessed by this author and half the ton, something shifted between them. Lord Thomas spoke of his time in India, of the frauds he had investigated, but also of his growing realization that sometimes the law and justice were not the same thing. He told her of a case where a widow had forged her husband's will to protect her children from a predatory relative, and how he had chosen to look the other way. Diana listened with an intensity that made her forget to maintain Mrs. Fairfax's vacant expression. When she asked whether he ever regretted such choices, he looked directly into her eyes and said that the only thing he would regret would be causing unnecessary suffering to someone who had already suffered enough. The message was clear to everyone present, though perhaps only Diana and this author understood its full import. The crisis came, as crises often do, at the worst possible moment. Lord Thomas had spent weeks carefully managing the situation, discouraging family curiosity, protecting Diana while she unknowingly stole his heart piece by piece. But he had not counted on Mr. Josiah Fairfax, a distant cousin of the late Mr. Fairfax, who arrived from Liverpool with a grievance and a daguerreotype. Mr. Fairfax believed he should have inherited something from his cousin's widow and had come to contest the will. More dangerously, he had brought a photograph from his wedding 5 years prior, which the real Mrs. Fairfax had attended. The family dinner Lord Thomas had carefully orchestrated to formally welcome Mrs. Fairfax became a trap neither he nor Diana had anticipated. This author naturally secured an invitation through Lord Thomas's mother, Lady Margaret, who was dying of curiosity about this woman who had captured her son's attention. As the daguerreotype was passed around the table, Lord Thomas watched Diana's face drain of color. He tried to intercept the image, but Mr. Josiah Fairfax, sensing drama, insisted everyone see it, especially dear cousin Arabella. When the photograph reached Diana, her hands trembled so violently she nearly dropped it. There, clear as day, was the real Mrs. Fairfax, stout, stern-faced, unmistakably not Diana. The silence that followed was deafening. Diana rose from her chair with a dignity that was entirely her own. She looked directly at Lord Thomas, and in that look was everything: apology, regret, and something deeper that made his face contort with pain. She had not known he was protecting her. She thought she had fooled him along with everyone else. She fled the dining room, but Lord Thomas was faster. He caught her in the entrance hall, pulling her into his study before the stunned family could react. The sound of the lock turning echoed through the house. This author, through means that shall remain mysterious, happened to be in the adjoining library, where voices carried quite clearly through the connecting door. Diana's confession poured out like water through a broken dam. The accident, the exchange of clothes, the confusion at the inn, the terrible realization that correcting the mistake might lead to accusations of murder or theft, the letter about the inheritance, her desperate decision to maintain the deception just long enough to survive. But then, with a courage that was magnificent to witness, she spoke of Lord Thomas himself, how his kindness had made her deception agony, how every day she wanted to tell him the truth but knew it would mean prison or worse, how she had come to care for him so deeply that maintaining the lie had become more painful than any punishment the law could devise. Lord Thomas's response stunned even this jaded chronicler of society. He confessed everything: the letter from Yorkshire, his decision to protect her, his weeks of careful management to prevent discovery. He told her how he had watched her give half her weekly allowance to a family of street beggars, seen her risk her safety to protect a child from a runaway horse, observed her genuine grief when speaking of the real Mrs. Fairfax. Most of all, he had fallen completely, irrevocably in love with the woman beneath the lie, the brilliant, kind, brave woman who had chosen survival in the only way available to her. Diana's shocked gasp was audible even through the door. Why? She demanded. Had he not exposed her immediately if he knew the truth? His answer, gentle listeners, would have melted the hardest heart. He said that in India, he had learned that sometimes the law was merely a tool for the powerful to crush the powerless. He had seen too many crimes committed in the name of justice. When he met Diana, he saw not a criminal, but a survivor, not a deceiver, but a woman forced into an impossible position by circumstances beyond her control. He had protected her, not from pity, but from admiration. And then, despite his best intentions, he had fallen in love with her courage, her intelligence, her determination to survive without truly harming anyone. When they emerged from the study, they faced the assembled family together. Lord Thomas's hand held Diana's firmly, a public declaration of protection and intent. Diana addressed the family with remarkable composure. She confessed everything, omitting nothing, including her growing feelings for Lord Thomas. She apologized for the deception, offered to make any restitution required, and prepared to face whatever consequences awaited. The family's reaction was swift and decisive, orchestrated by Lord Thomas and his formidable mother, Lady Margaret. Mr. Josiah Fairfax began to sputter about fraud and justice, but Lord Thomas approached him with a document. It was a report from Liverpool about certain irregularities in Mr. Fairfax's own business dealings, irregularities that Lord Thomas's investigation had uncovered while researching Mrs. Fairfax's background. The negotiation was brief. Mr. Fairfax would forget what he had seen tonight, destroy the daguerreotype, and never speak of this matter again. In return, Lord Thomas would forget what he had learned about Liverpool. Mr. Fairfax, faced with potential ruin, agreed immediately. Lord James, Thomas's younger brother, declared it the most entertaining dinner he had ever attended and offered to help in any way possible. Lady Margaret, who had been observing silently, finally spoke. She announced that she had never liked Arabella Fairfax anyway, a cold, bitter woman who had made everyone miserable with her complaints and demands. This young woman, whoever she truly was, had shown more grace and kindness in one evening than Arabella had in 70 years. Then came the masterstroke. The family solicitor, Mr. Pembroke, who had been invited to dinner for this very purpose, produced a letter from his briefcase. He had discovered it while reviewing the Fairfax papers, a letter dated 3 days before Mrs. Fairfax's death, written in her hand and properly witnessed. In it, Mrs. Fairfax left her entire personal estate, not the Carlyle inheritance, but her own money, to her companion, Miss Diana Pemberley, in recognition of 3 years of devoted service and genuine friendship. The amount was modest, but sufficient for independence. £2,000. Diana burst into tears. Lord Thomas pulled her into his arms. Social propriety be damned. The next weeks required careful management. Lord Thomas and Lady Margaret orchestrated a campaign worthy of Wellington. First, they spread their own version of events. Diana had been confused after the accident. The mistake at the inn had been genuine. And when she recovered her memory, she found herself trapped in a situation she didn't know how to escape. The Carlyle family, recognizing the extraordinary circumstances, had chosen compassion over prosecution. Mr. Grimsby, the solicitor, proved unexpectedly helpful. He revealed that he had begun to suspect something was amiss after Diana's 3rd visit, but had initiated his own quiet investigation. When he discovered the letter from Mrs. Fairfax to Diana and learned of Lord Thomas's feelings, he chose to interpret the situation as a genuine case of mistaken identity, complicated by head injury and trauma. Lord Thomas made it abundantly clear that anyone who insulted Diana would answer to him personally. Given his reputation as a crackshot and accomplished swordsman, this threat carried considerable weight. Lady Margaret deployed her social connections strategically, reminding various gossipers of their own youthful indiscretions, and suggesting that compassion shown now might be remembered if they ever needed it themselves. The turning point came at the Ashford Ball in early May. Lord Thomas arrived with Diana on his arm, her head held high despite the whispers. She wore a simple but elegant gown of midnight blue that belonged to no one but Diana Pemberley. They danced the first waltz together, and this author has never seen anything quite like it. Lord Thomas held her as if she were made of spun gold and starlight. Diana looked up at him with such open adoration that even the strongest critics found their censure faltering. Then, in the middle of the ballroom, Lord Thomas dropped to one knee. His proposal was simple and perfect. He said he had spent 5 years investigating frauds and deceptions, but the only truth that mattered was that he loved Diana Pemberley, not Mrs. Fairfax, not an heiress, but the brave, brilliant woman who had walked into his life through a lie and shown him the truth about his own heart. Diana's acceptance was wordless. She simply pulled him to his feet and kissed him thoroughly, causing at least 3 dowagers to require their smelling salts, and this author to lead a round of spontaneous applause. The wedding took place in June at St. George's, the same church where Diana had maintained her deception. The irony was not lost on anyone, least of all the bride and groom. Diana wore her mother's wedding dress, retrieved from storage and lovingly restored by Lady Margaret. The gesture was more than symbolic. It was a public declaration that Diana was celebrated for who she truly was. Lord Thomas's wedding gift to his bride was extraordinary. He had established a fund for impoverished gentlewomen, ensuring no woman would ever again face the desperate choice Diana had faced. The fund's first act was to provide pensions for all of Mrs. Fairfax's former companions, recognizing their service to a difficult woman. During the wedding breakfast, Lord Thomas stood to speak. He produced the forged signature Diana had used and burned it publicly, declaring that the only signature that mattered now was the one she had just used to sign the marriage register as Diana Carlyle. Mr. Josiah Fairfax, now firmly under Lord Thomas's thumb, gave a toast praising the bride's courage and wishing the couple well, his words carefully scripted by Lady Margaret. The newlyweds departed for Italy, where Lord Thomas promised Diana she could use her real name every single day for the rest of their lives. Though this author has heard rumors that they occasionally play a game where she pretends to be someone else, a duchess, a shepherdess, a mysterious foreign countess, and he must discover her true identity through careful investigation. The game always ends the same way, with Lord Thomas declaring that, no matter who she pretends to be, he will always recognize the woman he loves. Their first child, born the following spring, was christened Diana Truth Carlyle. The truth was Lord Thomas's insistence, a name that caused considerable amusement among the congregation. And so, gentle listeners, we reach the end of this most unusual tale. A desperate woman took a dead woman's name to survive and discovered that the greatest truth one can tell is love itself. A man seeking deception found honesty in the most unexpected place, the heart of a beautiful liar. Together, they proved that sometimes the most authentic life begins with a necessary fiction. This author withdraws until our next encounter, but before I go, I leave you with this thought. We all wear disguises of one sort or another, whether they be titles, manners, or simply the faces we show the world each morning. But love, true love, has a way of seeing through every disguise to the heart beneath. Until then, remember, the greatest scandals often lead to the greatest happiness, and the most dangerous lies can sometimes lead us to the safest truths. Your devoted chronicler, Lady Ravenswood.